Hello, everyone. Welcome to Starfleet Tactical. I am Chris Weave, and I am with, as always, with me is Patrick Doyle, and we also have Chandler Archibald, who we've mentioned a couple of times on the show, at least a couple of times. And so, Chandler, we're going to start off with a quiz. Is anything that we say tonight the opinion of our employers?
Definitely not.
Yay, you passed the quiz. You can be on the show. Okay. So, how are you guys doing?
So far, so good. Been a pretty decent day so far. Been able to relax a little.
We had nice 75-degree weather in Minnesota. It's perfect today.
Yeah, so it's summer in Minnesota?
Yes.
Sort of.
So, okay, so that's good. So you've got, let's see, that would be 41 days left, right? Because about 6
we're
weeks
almost done
summer.
Yeah, we're about halfway through summer now.
Yeah.
And it could still snow next week.
Yeah, it really could. I mean, I was in town in late April, in Des Moines in late April, and we got snow. I drove through the snow. It was
that happens.
It was all
gone
gone
a couple years ago.
It was all gone by the afternoon, but I mean, there was an accumulation on the ground in the morning. I was stunned. But let's see. Somebody, apparently we've got perfect weather in Pennsylvania. Bob says there's perfect weather in Pennsylvania. Too, so.
All right.
So that's good to know. What did you guys do this week?
Well, I spent most of it being angry and annoyed at one particular agency, so yeah, just trying to resolve simple IT issues. Been nothing but a time suck. Otherwise, it was a pretty decent week.
Yeah, I've kind of recalibrated my idea of IT failures. It's like, you know what, this is sort of annoying, but my computer didn't catch on fire, so I guess it's okay.
Oh yeah, there is that. That's true. I have not had one of my computers catch on fire. Now, actually, if it was one of those employers' computers, I wouldn't care nearly as much.
Yeah, I can understand.
We'd probably be eliminating an old asset.
Yeah. But probably the old assets are the only ones that can actually work with the website, so you'd be in problem with that.
Oh, there is that. Yeah,
there's still like one or two things I have to use Internet Explorer for one or two things because it just doesn't work with the more recent stuff.
Oh no, I have to use Internet Explorer for everything. I've very specifically downloaded Internet Explorer to be able to do stuff, and that worked up until about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So now nothing works. Everything goes backwards.
And that's so you can use NavFit 98 because that's where we're still at with the Navy because that makes a lot of sense.
That's
98
right. Yep.
Alpha.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, that's 23 years old. Yeah.
Keeps getting older every year. It's amazing how that works.
That's right. It's on a 1-for-1 basis.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is that too.
So,
but
well, congratulations to Wright, who says that he started a new job this week. That's good. And I think
good.
So I see my brother Delon is on, so I've already called out to him, and I think my friend Vic Kaufman is on. So Vic's brother Arius is a member of BU 9, and at some point we'll probably try to get Arius on. Haven't gotten around to doing that yet. I think Arius is actually in the process of moving to Florida.
Really?
Yeah, he's going to go do some cool work supporting the agency that I work for.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, that's fantastic.
So this is good. The original plan was for him to come to Dayton. At least that's the plan I had. It's like, hey, this guy would be really great for that opening you've got. And then all of a sudden the opening ended up being in Florida rather than in Dayton. So
okay. Well, good.
But I'll still get a chance to see him and work with him on some stuff. So that'll be good. That'll be good.
Nice. Nice.
But And let's see, I'm trying to think of who else I've been talking to recently. I started listening to the audiobook version of David Weber's Uncompromising Honor, which is the last of the Honor Harrington mainstream Honor Harrington novels. And I'm about maybe 6 or 7 hours into it, and I've been enjoying it so far.
Oh, good. All right.
But,
yeah, I think I have probably two to go before finishing the series. This is the 14th book.
It's the 14th book, and I think but I'm not positive. I think there's one more that's coming out that's Michelle Hankey.
Oh, really? Okay.
What's the side series? Saganami Island. Is it the Saganami Island series that she's in? I think I'm not positive, but I think there's one more with her that's coming out, and then that's and then they'll sort of like do the time jump forward if they're gonna, when David starts writing more books in the series. But he sort of decided he's going to wrap up this time period.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm looking forward to finishing it. My original plan was I was going to redo the entire series and all of them, all 14, all the side series, and then I realized that,
you could watch every Star Trek episode in the time it takes.
I realized I'm 56 years old and I don't have that many years left.
Yeah, that's a lot of hours.
It's a lot of hours. I mean, War of Honor is 40 hours.
Yeah, you might be looking at 700 hours.
Yeah. Let's see. It could. It's probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not quite that much. It's probably not quite as much.
4 to 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably 500.
You can put it on triple speed though, and just get it done.
One of the things I like about Audible is that you can set it. I've got it set to 1.2 times. And that's actually a pretty good speed. I had or I still have a DVD player that when I bought it, it had a feature that I didn't even notice that it had, but it turned out to be the most important feature in the DVD player. And that is you can play stuff at 1.5 speed. And because it's all digital, it doesn't, the voices don't come out tinny. Basically what happens is everybody talks as fast as I talk normally anyway. And if it's a dancing scene or a fight scene or something, it looks kind of weird. Otherwise, you just sort of go, wow, these people are really fit and they walk places fast. And this is useful because there are some shows, like for instance, Space 1999. If you have to invest 45 minutes in for each episode, it may not be worth it. But at a half hour per episode, I'm willing to spend a half hour per episode on that show.
And at the rate that they move and talk, I mean, you might not really notice it, right?
Yeah, well, especially in the first season. In the second season, when they decided that they were going to be an action show, it kind of changed. But in the first season, and actually the differences between the seasons become a lot more apparent. Like I literally watched the entire series over the course of 2 days, a big chunk of it. So I'd gotten it from my brother and sister-in-law for Christmas one year, and I was watching it while assembling, I think, 7 bookcases. And so it took a while to assemble 7 bookcases. And so I got a chance to watch most of the series.
I think, did I count 6 bookcases behind you right now?
Those are actually some of the bookcases I assembled. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 back over there. And then of the same flavor of bookcase, I think the other 2 are in the storage room. Or no, one of them. No, I'm sorry. They're over there. They're over by the entertainment unit. Of those, the IKEA bookcases are the ones in the storage room. So when I was getting ready to move to Newport, the movers came in. One of the things I've discovered about moving is that if you've got a lot of books but you don't have a lot of other furniture, movers don't see how much stuff I have. They just don't see it. There has been no material difference to how prepared the movers are when they send somebody in advance to count my stuff, or when they don't do that. I get equally poor results regardless. And so they sent somebody to do an assessment, and I know what they did. They went 1 bed, 1 couch, 1 love seat, end table, kitchen table, coffee table, couple of dressers, no problem. I had 40 bookcases. 40 bookcases in that apartment. And so they came to move me, and then they called for reinforcements, and then they called for reinforcements, and they eventually had 7 people doing the pack out. Because it was just insane. It's like, it's like, why did I even bother having you people come and do a reconnaissance in advance? So
yeah.
It was just kind of crazy. But that was when I was moving up to Newport for the job at the Naval War College, which had a lot of good things going for it, but it wasn't. Being a professor of wargaming at the Naval War College isn't nearly as good a job as it sounds like it should be.
Yeah, because it sounds like it ought to be pretty cool. But
yeah, being a student at the Naval War College was fantastic.
Loved that.
That was
I love Newport. That
Yeah.
was fun. Good times.
Yeah, and
Beautiful city.
now I had, I grew up in Iowa, and then I went out to DC for 17 years, and then I moved to Newport, and I had forgotten that your bone marrow can be cold. And I learned that the first winter, that your bone marrow can be cold. But then my blood thickened up nicely, and I was back to being like a hardy Midwesterner. So, but that first winter was pretty brutal. So
yeah. So
the $400 heating bill in January didn't help.
So for everybody, we've got so we have Chandler on today. He's going to basically tell us a story.
Yes,
I got a couple.
Chandler essentially got to go wargaming once with the 1-to-1 scale miniatures.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah. So, well, I'll let Chandler tell it, but he was a Navy reservist. He retired a few years ago. We got commissioned. Strangely enough, I got commissioned 6 months before Chandler did. We went to the same ROTC unit at the University of Minnesota, but I took 10 years off from the Navy, and so he got to be done before me. Yeah. And then Chandler became a recruiter and talked me into rejoining the Navy. So,
so he's to blame.
I'm to blame when you finally get that retirement check.
He was, I know. He's actually to be credited with an awful lot. Like my continuing to live indoors and eat hot food during the bad years of the airlines. Anyways, Chandler, tell us a little about yourself, and then we can kind of roll on into it.
All right, sounds good. I got a couple things. So I did graduate with Pat. Now I'm a retired commander now. So my first tour was on Cape St. George Aegis Cruiser. After that, I did some time as OIC of a group of landing craft, which was totally fun, kind of blue collar Navy. I had the LCUs, type with the door come down in the front and brings the Marines to the beach. So I did that for a couple of years, really fun duty. Then I taught ROTC over at Old Dominion University for about 3 years. Very fun tour. Then I joined the reserves. I decided I liked teaching, so I decided I was going to become a teacher. So I was a teacher here in Minnesota, came back to Minnesota. I joined the reserves. I used to go back to Norfolk, Virginia on the Astosian, a reserve frigate. So I used to come back and do that a lot. And then I got real lucky. When I was joining the reserves out in Minnesota, they were setting up a new unit called Fleet ASW. And I like ASW, anti-submarine warfare, so I kind of joined and we got to create it. It was brand new. There wasn't really a plan. So we got to kind of make our own plan. We got to kind of really get tactical very quickly. So we did win a lot of schooling. We got really good. Our reserve team really focused on fleet ASW tactics because that's what the school does. We went to all the schools they could give us, and then we got to the point that we could help teach. And we got pretty good. What I really liked about the ASW stuff is we, ships don't get to focus on ASW, anti-submarine warfare. You're just too busy. It's just one of the things you get to do. It's not something you get to do a lot. And many ships just kind of put it aside, like not the most important thing they're going to do this year is play that one.
Chandler,
yeah.
Explain what ASW is.
ASW is anti-submarine warfare. Anti-submarine warfare, yeah. Yeah, if I use acronyms, slow me down.
Sounds good.
Anyway, so we would do these. So we got really good at the reserves. We did lots of training. We actually made our own. Chris, you'll like this. You know, Dangerous Waters probably. So we used Dangerous Waters as our own little CIC simulator trainer. So we built our own computer simulator trainer just using Dangerous Waters. And we got plotting paper out. We did the old classic way of plotting for submarines. And our team got really good at it. And then we had the opportunity to go play some war games. We got pretty good. And they decided to invite us out for a RIM pack. A RIM pack is, remember what it stands for, Chris? Some Rim of the Pacific. Anyway, big war game on the Pacific. Yeah, gigantic war game on the Pacific. But all the navies of the Pacific are showing up to play, except for China normally.
Which RIM pack were you in?
That was RIM pack 2004. I was there.
Okay, I did RIM pack 2002.
Okay.
Which was the weird one because 9/11 had happened, and they were trying to decide. They kept going back and forth. Are we going to do it? Or are we not going to do it? Because we were like busy whaling on Afghanistan at the time.
Yeah.
And so they couldn't decide whether they were going to do it or not. And finally, all of our allies just said, "For God's sakes, just do the damn exercise."
Mm-hmm.
So when I did it, it was the weirdest RIM pack ever. They pulled in a Commodore from a training destroyer squadron and brought his people in to be the sea combat commander. I mean, these guys didn't normally go to sea. They didn't deploy. And so he grabbed his junior officers and his senior enlisted and brought them along and as a training opportunity. And there's no carrier, and it was a blast. I can tell that story after you're done telling yours. So
okay. So yeah, so we the other one that reminds me that Pat and I started talking because both of us play Star Trek games. We always are working on those. We went through as a team of reservists. We went down to San Diego and went through their ASW team trainer, just like we were a ship team, but we're just a group of reservists that play this game, Dangerous Waters. But we were really good. But we had been practicing, and most ships just sort of like throw their team together, and now you got to jump in there. And we've been training as everyone knew what their own job was. And I was the anti-submarine warfare evaluator, so I was the one making the anti-submarine warfare decisions. But we were really sharp, and they were having trouble keeping us challenged. They were having trouble giving us more difficult problems enough. And the last tactical problem, they even kid and call it the Kobayashi Maru, because it's the same thing. It's you're not going to win it. They're just going to keep throwing ships at you, basically. And just so many ships will be out there, you'll lose. That's the plan. And we know we're going into that one. But what was fun is I knew I was going to a game that they're just going to keep throwing ships at me. And plus, it's not real torpedoes, so you're not really worrying about ordnance. But what we started doing is I started kind of using the old Starfleet battles tactic of throwing your plasma torpedo over your shoulder and pushing somebody away. And I kept doing that over and over again. I would like come up to one of the enemy submarines, turn around and throw a torpedo down that bearing and get him moving. And that would make that submarine turn for a while. Then I would keep my speed up and go to another spot. And then I would actually even use like my anti-submarine warfare ASROC, the one that you throw out in front of you. And I'd kind of guess where I think he's going to be, and I'd hit him there. So we kept winning over and over again. And they were getting frustrated because now like 5 submarines have already beat. And we won the game completely when I got him really frustrated. I was just starting to predict where he's going to. Basically, once you win, they just throw another submarine on the plot. And I started predicting where that was going to be next. Like if I was in the back of the room, I'd put one here. So when I had a pretty good guess where he was going to put the next submarine, I just launched torpedo down that bearing and started turning, and it worked perfectly. As he put the submarine there for my next threat, he was already getting hit. So then they quit. They said, "Okay, we won. We can't do anymore. You won that game." So we actually won the Kobayashi Maru. It was pretty fun. So we all go out to some of us go out to this RIM pack now, and we're still reservists, so we're still kind of feeling as if we're not worthy. We don't know it's the high tech stuff you do at times because we get rusty, but we do ASW like every weekend, and they do it less than we do. So we go out and we start doing the first game, and the very first game, the very first scenario we're looking at, it was basically an anchorage. Let me see. I do have some slides here. Let me see if I can show you one. Let me see if I press the button here. I'm going to hit the share button, right? Share. Oh, now that's not good.
Well, that's pretty cool.
That was kind of psychedelic. So if I hit share.
Too much LDS back in the 60s.
Or Pat, do you want to see the
There we
ASW
go.
threat bearing?
Oh.
Is it working now?
Oh, there you go.
Okay. There we go. So basically, this is just an anchorage. So we're just supposed to be in one spot. And let's see, I'm on this ship, the Lake Champlain this time. It's an Aegis cruiser. And I'm on the ship, and I'm asking them what's their plan. He says, well, there's this diesel sub out there, Lynch. It could come out. There's a diesel sub out there, Type 209, a German Type 209, which is a Chile owns of the Simpson. Like super quiet. We're not going to see it coming. He's just going to sneak past one of our ships and get us. We know that. I'm like, well, that's a pretty pessimistic attitude. Where's your threat bearing? And they said, threat bearing? It could come from any direction. And I said, you know what? That makes no sense. You got to pick a threat bearing. You got to have a plan. You got to pick a direction where you think he might be. They're like, we don't have a clue. It could be anywhere. So what I did is I started going through where this submarine Type 209 needs to be next. And the thing is, I knew it had another exercise coming up the next about 6 hours later. And it was out this direction somewhere, basically. It was out here. It was out here, a good day away. I mean, 6 hours away plus. So I'm like, okay, if I was a skipper, I would definitely want to be in that direction. I wouldn't want to be playing over here because then you're just going to give yourself a longer transit to the next game. So you got a threat bearing now. So just say it's 045. That's just my guess. Let's just say 045, start looking that way. And they're like, okay, so and plus 045 was good because this is, I don't want to get complicated, but this is basically, you can analyze water space with this thing called PCI Mat. I know you've played with it, Chris. Basically, it's, ways of looking at temperature and depth and salinity. Also, your underwater pictures there too. So basically, looking at, this was a good downslope environment. So it was deeper that way, basically. It'd be better for him to be out that way than to be anywhere else. So I just drew 045 as my guess. And then we started playing. Once you start playing, we start sending helicopters down that bearing, 045. And it was like minutes into the game. Like minutes later, we got our first contact. So we end up beating the sub in like record 15 minutes. The sub was at 048. So, and people are like, so I feel like a little better about this now. So we get the sub like right away. It's a diesel sub too. The other thing is, I had a little intel because I met some of the guys before the exercise here, and someone said they met the Simpsons diesel sub captain, and he's very aggressive because he was telling our officers, "I'm going to sink your ships. You're going to be very embarrassed." And he's a big deal to him. I mean, he's a Chilean submarine, and he really wants to do well. And this is a good time to go up against the American Navy and show what he's made of. Plus, these subs are hard to find. He's got a pretty big advantage. So I know he's really going to want to be aggressive too. So that'll come back in the story later. But anyway, so we beat him in like minutes. So, and after that, anything I said, it was awesome because they're like, oh, it's Archibald. He's the guy who knows everything about ASW. And I was pretty much just kind of guessing. But so it was good. It was kind of like the turn left on the bottom of the hour sort of thing. So we did a whole bunch of different games as time goes on. I got a couple stories. This is kind of like the classic ASW scenario where you got a sub out there. You're kind of using your tail. Your tail is your passive sonar array, and you're trying to see if you can hear some bearings. And you eventually get some bearings. And we found that submarine out there, and we started to you put a P3, he goes a line of sonar buoys there, makes a threat bearing so you can't get through them, and that worked great. We beat that one too.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yeah, please.
So one of the things you may have seen on that previous slide that there was something that said SQR-19, right? So the square 19 is the towed array that the submarine or that the surface ship is dragging behind it. Yeah. And one of the things about towed arrays that I know surprised me when I first got there is you know that it may give you a bearing of like 67 degrees. But the thing is it 67 degrees to port or is it 67 degrees to starboard?
Right.
It doesn't tell you that. You have to kind of figure that out, right? So I think you made a reference, or it was on the slide, to TMA, target motion analysis.
Right.
It's part of what you're doing, because you've got a line of bearing sensor, so you're not getting any range information, and you're having to sort of like figure out, okay, the target's moving and I'm moving, and I don't know which side of the array I'm looking out of, and okay, I'm getting these hits. What's a consistent picture for that? And okay, if my hypothesis is that he's over there and not over there, how can I confirm that he really is on this side? And some of it's just stuff like, well, the exercise area, the boundary to the exercise area isn't very far away. He's probably not going to be locked up against the edge of the boundary because that decreases his freedom of movement. Or, it might be an island or something, right? It could be an actual physical thing that you wouldn't want to run into.
Right, yeah.
And so it's like, he's not going to be over there. So I can kind of guess he's going to be over there. So it's even harder than it looks like.
Yes. Yeah, ASW is very hard. It really takes a lot of hours. You never get to play like a quick ASW game. When you do anti-submarine warfare, you're looking at an all-night evening. You could be 8 hours into it.
There's a reason why they call it awfully slow warfare.
Slow warfare, yeah, it's slow.
And there's a reason why they went to the composite warfare commander system, to which we can talk about a little bit later. But for everybody out there, the short version of it is that you've got warfare commanders who have responsibility for different warfare areas, and part of that is because a fast ASW encounter may take 6 hours, whereas a slow air encounter may be over in 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a slow one. Yeah.
And so, rather than have one guy trying to manage the problem and thinking at different speeds, the answer was split up the problem and hand out chunks of the problem to different 06s and let them run it separately.
Right.
So, but back to you, sir.
Okay, no, so yeah, that's really good. That TMA thing will get into that. Anyway, so I've been through a couple of these so far, and I'm starting to get a reputation because we've won 2 now. So the next one, I'm on a different ship. I'm on the Howard now. The Howard's a DDG, so I'm on a different ship. And we're doing a couple different games, and it's been pretty exciting. And the captain's getting to know me pretty well. And what happens is, after about a day and a half, actually, I think I've been on board 2 days now. So I've been on board a couple days, and the skipper knows me well. We talk in ASW. We've done a lot of these problems together. Nothing too revolutionary. We haven't really won big or lost big. We've just been tracking some subs, and we did fine. And the skipper, it's we're coming up on a missile shoot tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. And now it's about 10 p.m. right now, and the skipper's eyes are just draining. He just looks so darn tired, and he's been up about 24 hours straight. And I've only been on board a couple days now, but we get to know each other pretty well. And he knows I know ASW well by now. And so we're coming up on an all-night exercise in which we're supposed to guard this ship here, this AOR Protector. I don't even know what nationality it was. I don't remember anymore. We're supposed to guard it, and somewhere out there, there's going to be 2 submarines hiding to find us. And basically, just stay alive. There's going to be an SSN, the Charlotte, one of our subs, a nuclear sub. And there's going to be a South Korean diesel Type 209 also. So we're up against 2 subs. And the idea is just stay alive, make it whatever plan you want, and just don't get killed in all night long. That's the plan. Hopefully, if you can sink them, that's good for you. But if you just don't get killed, if you can, because overall, these subs are better than you when it comes right down to it.
The Protector is Canadian.
Oh, is it? That's right. Okay.
Which I was guessing. That was my hypothesis.
It's got the funny spelling, so yeah.
Yeah, and Algonquin I recognized as being a Canadian ship also.
Okay. So anyway, so what ends up happening is right in that evening, we just start the battle problem. We make the problem together. We say, okay, our plan is going to be take our force and just go, we're going to do this. Let's see if I can show you. There's the big area. The big area, basically, we're just going to hide in this corner down here. We're going to put this surface action group that we have down here. We're going to hide. We're not going to go. We're going to go quiet. We're going to have all of our radars off and just hope he doesn't find us for a while. And then we also have control of several different helicopters and some P3s. And we're gonna make it look like we're looking for him here. We're gonna make some noise, put some active buoys in the water, make it look like maybe we're over here, and just basically hoping he doesn't come down and find us in this corner. That's kind of the plan. Well, about 2 hours into this, now it's midnight, and the captain turns to me and says, "I don't know if anything's gonna happen. Maybe they're not even gonna find us tonight, but Arch, if I don't get some sleep, I can't do the missile shoot tomorrow." And the thing is, my TAO is a chief engineer, doesn't know anything about ESW, but he's great as a TAO. Can you do me a favor? Can you just sit in my chair tonight and just basically make the CO-like decisions? I know I'm asking a lot because they're not even on my ship. And I'm like, yes, I'll do it. I'd be happy to do it, sir. Anyway, so I take his chair in CIC, and I suddenly find myself not only in charge of an Arleigh Burke destroyer in the middle of the night, but actually I've got my whole surface action group I'm in charge of because we're the OTC that night. So I'm in charge of this whole group of ships. I've got.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah, please go.
So for a couple of things, TAO is Tactical Action Officer.
Yeah.
OTC is Officer in Tactical Command.
Thank you. It's hard not to speak in acronyms. Yeah. So basically, I got to remember I'm a reservist. I'm not active duty. I'm a lieutenant commander. I'm very well trained, but never actually commanded a ship before, nor am I qualified to. But I'm feeling good about playing war games tonight, and I've had several successes already in the past couple of days. So Skipper goes to bed, and we're playing that diversion game, kind of hiding down here. And as time goes on, well, first of all, this the submarine we're going up against is the only noise he's making is 60 hertz, and that's the nice noise all American and Western ships make. So that is not helpful. I mean, everyone's making that noise, I'm trying to say. So basically, I'm just drawing lines here, just showing you everywhere I can see a 60 hertz line, it could be anybody. That's the other reason why we're like, well, this is hope. It's going to be hard. If this guy comes near us, he's probably going to kill us before we even know he's there. The first thing we'll hear is torpedo in the water, and we lost the game. It's kind of how we're thinking this is going to go. But he's got to find us first, though. So what ends up happening, I go and I'm on Howard here, and I go over to the EW Council, and I talk to the Electronic Warfare Council. And I make sure, do you know what you're looking for? Because he's still got to find us. And we're not having any radars on at all, so he's going to have to turn his on. So you got to really look closely for Calypso radar. If you see a Calypso radar, because I've done the research, a Calypso radar, and then he looks it up, what it would look like. If that pops on for a second, you got to yell, because that's what he's going to find us with. Well, now he knows that. And it's like 30 minutes later. Calypso radar, this bearing. Calypso radar, here down this bearing. And so there he was. He did turn his radar on, and it was right down this bearing. So now we know he's getting closer to us, and we know he's down there somewhere. But it was only for a little while, and we lose him again, and we're not moving. So what ends up happening next is I'll go back. What ends up happening next is we're going slow because we want to be quiet. Maybe it would have been a good idea just to go fast and get out of there. That's what I thought about doing that. But we had decided to kind of stay slow and go in this group. But so as time goes on, I'm like, okay, we're waiting for him to close on us and take the shot. So we still can't hear him because he's only making that one noise everyone's making. And time goes on, I'm like, okay, this is not going well. We are kind of waiting to get killed now. I bet he's getting closer. And we still don't have an idea where he's at. And then, I'm trying to remember, this has been a couple years. Yeah, it was a Lynch. So I remember thinking to myself, as he's making an approach, he's probably going to, what ship would he see first? And he'd probably want to hide behind near that ship for a while because he would mask his noise. Kind of like that. If he could kind of stay under a ship for a while, would mask his 60 hertz noise, he would look just like another ship. So I become kind of convinced that he's probably underneath that ship. And what I do is I throw my helicopters in the air, and I make a plan to go have that Lynch. I send him away, and as soon as I send him away, I've got the helicopters dropping buoys right there, and killed him right there. So it was so much fun because here it is now. It's about 1 a.m. We already won the game. We killed it. We killed the South Korean sub. And that's pretty much the end of the game. So then we had all night long to kind of celebrate. Not much happened after that. We looked for the American sub for a while, but it was so far away it wasn't worth looking. But either way, we got this. So we get this BZ. The Bravo Zulu means like super well done. So we get this BZ from the Admiral saying, "Great job. I didn't think you guys were going to win that one." That was pretty cool. So the next morning, I let the captain sleep in until like 6. And when I go talk to him at 6 a.m, I want to go tell him the news, what happened last night when he was sleeping. So I go, I got the little brief already, what happened, how the game went. As soon as I go in there, I've only been in there like 2 seconds when he says, "Okay, just a minute, Arch," and the phone rings. See, now he's talking to the Admiral. The Admiral's talking to him. And the Admiral's going on and on about how well it went last night. And the captain's like pretending he was there. He's like, yep. We had a good team over here, sir. Now, don't worry. We had a good team. And and I'm kind of sitting here like, hey, it was me. But immediately what ends up happening is when the captain hangs up, he says, "Arch, I'm sorry. You know how that goes. If I have to take the blame when Seaman Timmy pees on a car in Honolulu, I sure as hell got to take the credit when we win a game, when we win a war game out here." And he says, "Okay, tell me what happened." I tell him the story how we won the game and how I was convinced it was down that bearing. We took a chance, and sure enough, he was hiding there. So he's like, "That looks great." And then we start talking, have breakfast together in his little room there. And he starts talking about, "So where do you live? You get a house in San Diego? Where do you live?" Because he's from San Diego too. And I said, "Sir, I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota." It's like, "What? How can you live in Minneapolis, Minnesota? Aren't you with Fleet SW in San Diego?" I said, "Yes, sir. I'm a reservist." And the captain's face turns literally white. Like, "What? That can't be." Then he says to me, he says, "I gave you like command of my ship last night. You probably should have mentioned that." And I'm like, "Skipper, you gave me command of an early Burke destroyer in the middle of a big war game with 10 other ships and subs and P3s, and I'm not going to say no to that." So I had to say yes. Anyway, so it worked out fine. We won the game. That was totally fun, but it was pretty funny that so I did get to play really 1-to-1 scale. We had played these games my whole life, but to get to do it with a real fleet and then to win several times in a row was pretty exciting.
Your SWO pin was just as silver as his, right?
Yeah, or gold, but yeah.
Oh, just as gold as his. I mean,
right.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same SWO pin, right?
Right.
So, one of the things that I find interesting about hearing this story from you this time, because I've heard you talk a little bit about it before, and I've heard Pat talk about it. I don't recall you saying during any of this, utter the words Starfleet battles.
Yeah. Oh, I did or didn't?
I don't remember you saying that. Did I just miss it?
I mentioned only not during this battle game, but during the prep game, the one that we did. Yeah, the Starfleet Battles Tactics were kind of more against the Kobayashi Maru game. The scenario, yeah.
Because
that was just using like plasma torpedo tactics and making people move away.
So yeah, a lot of this stuff translates. A lot of it translates.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. When you think tactically, like how am I going to think? How am I going to think? Make the other guy think. That's pretty much how that works too.
Yeah. How is somebody going to read? Go ahead, Jim.
Am I presenting or not presenting? It's hard for me to tell.
You're not presenting anymore.
I'm not.
Now you are. Now you're back to presenting.
Am I now? Right now? Do you see something called Cup?
Yep.
This one is a funny Star Trek story because this is this one. I felt like I was in an episode of Star Trek when this one happened. So there was a new system being tested out there called Cup. I have no idea what it stands for, but basically it was trying to make ships have a computerized plan. They thought it was just easier to have a computerized plan to have everyone have a way to go out there and look for a sub instead of making everyone do it yourself. So basically turn the plan over to the computer. And I watched it happen for a few minutes, and there's basically, look at this lines. This is just me making it up, but that's what it looks like. They've got a computerized plan of how to cover everything, and not only cover everything, but also, you know, where this guy is and where this guy is. So it's a well thought out plan in some ways. And when you're done, you have successfully covered that entire area using good road range or, you know, things. The problem is they're not understanding that the sub thinks, and the sub watches you go by, and the sub moves around you, and the sub hears another one there and goes around that one. So all you're really doing is just kind of driving around and staying on track, and the sub's moving around you. And it's much better to know he's moving around you and put a helicopter there and a threat bearing and decide I'm going to have him go attack. It's much better to fight that way than it is to fight with this sort of pathetic.
And it's even worse than that, because I mean, Cup was based upon the idea, because I got a chance to play with Cup a little bit too, because so his experience doing all this stuff and my experience doing when I worked at the Center for Naval Analysis from 99 to 2005. My first exercise was in November of 99. My last exercise was in November of 2004. So it's essentially, you know, we're sort of like, our experiences in some ways are comparable in that the same hot topics were the same hot topics at the time. And so Cup was based on this idea that you use PCI mat to figure out how good the water is and what your best sensor is going to be. And so you're driving around and like, I'm going to go active. I'm going to use my active sonar for a little bit as I'm pointing in this direction. And then I'll secure the active sonar when I turn left, and I'll do this for a while. And then you do stuff that looks like that. The problem is, I mean, one of the problems is, of course, is that you're not like doing a random search pattern looking for a body in the water. You've got a thinking opponent that's trying to outthink you. The other problem is Cup is based on the idea that the one and only concern you have is doing ASW. You're not doing any other mission at all while you're doing this. You're just not, and everybody executes on the mark. Right. So it's like when I saw this thing being used, there was all sorts of issues like, well, you know, we kind of like didn't do the track because we had to recover the helicopter. And so we had to go in this particular direction until the helo was on board. So then we just picked up our Cup track at that point. It's like, but you're like nowhere near where you were supposed to be when you were supposed to be going active and doing all these other things. Like, you're in different water. PCI mat was optimized for that particular portion of the water, that bottom topography, all the rest of it. Now you're someplace else doing the wrong thing.
But ironically, that was the best chance to ever see a sub, is when they're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Off the track.
And aside from that, I know some of the people that I worked with thought the mathematics behind it was entirely and completely just bogus, that it was just garbage math. I looked at it and said, the math could be absolutely perfect, but you know, this is a fantasy world if you think that people are actually going to be able to do that.
Right.
So,
but anyway, after playing all these games, I was on the aircraft carrier for a while, getting ready to fly home. And this is when I met the designer of Cup, and him and I got in this long discussion. And I told him stories about how we won several times, and he's like, I heard about you guys winning. Now the way we won is to think like the other guy and move around him and push him out different directions. And then once he's being pushed, then set a trap for him and that kind of thing. That's how you win. So I was talking to him for a long time, and I also said I watched how this Cup thing was, and it was really just ship staying. I'm 500 yards left of track, come right 2 degrees. It was just silly. I mean, it was just insane. It made no sense at all. And as him and I were having this argument, I really felt like I was having this moment of talking to like Daystrom with the M5 computer. I felt like I was having that sort of mental breakdown. Like, it was crazy. And he's just getting madder and madder about how this is going to work. And I felt like I was on the very verge of saying there are some things men have to do to remain men. I was ready to go there. But it was just funny because it was not tactically sound. It just made no sense to just go stay on a track and go try to win a battle that way. You got to make the guy. You got to see what he's thinking about.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, it seems like if that was going to be a search pattern, that might be just fine.
Yeah,
you cover all of the water if that's the goal.
If there was a sunken submarine there, it might be a good plan. A sunken submarine is a different plan than a guy who's seeing you and hearing you and moving around you.
Right. Yeah. A search plan assumes, doesn't that presuppose that an injured person would want to be found?
Mm-hmm.
When I saw CUP being used, it was interesting. I saw a Commodore yelling at his watch officer because they weren't in the location. Basically, it's in the morning. We need to be here, and they're like way out of position. And so he yells at the watch officer for a while, and then the watch officer leaves because he's going off duty. And then he turns to the current watch officer and says, "Well, did we run our CUP tracks last night?" And he goes, "I don't know, sir. That wasn't covered in the turnover. Get him back in here." And they called the guy back in so the captain could yell at him some more. Yeah. And I had never seen so many officers yelled at in public. I'd never seen so many people yelled at in public. And I was there with a CNA colleague who is a retired naval officer, retired SWO. And his comment was, "I've never seen so many people who deserve to be yelled at in public that aren't being yelled at in public."
It's hard to yell back at the skipper sometime.
There was one other time. So that was in that particular exercise was in November of 2004. In April of 2004, on my second to last exercise, where I'm on the carrier off of San Diego. It's a joint task force exercise. So it's the graduation exercise before the carrier strike group deploys. And at one point, the chief staff officer for the Sea Combat Commander comes in and says to the ASW watch officer, "Lieutenant, you will drop a torpedo this shift." And there's like 2 hours left in the shift or something. And she goes, "Sir, we're not currently tracking a submarine." And he just looks at her and says, "You will drop a torpedo this shift." "Yes, sir." It's like, shit, where are we gonna? We don't have a contact. Where are we gonna do it? So there was a PCIMAT guy on board. He was one of the contractor support, or I think he was a contractor, or he was somebody from the PCIMAT shop, because they're up on the hill in San Diego. I don't know if you've ever been there, but I was up there. It's near the military cemetery on the end of the peninsula. It's as far as you can go before you get to the cemetery on the end of the peninsula. Their building is fantastic. I mean, you're on top of this promontory overlooking, and if your office is on one side of the building, you've got the ocean. If your office is on the other side, you got the bay. It's fantastic. I don't remember if he works for them or if he's a contractor, but in any event, they turn to this. He's an old retired chief, old retired sonar chief, and they turn to him and say, "Chief, do you got any ideas on this? Because, we're not tracking anybody." And so he goes and he looks at the chart, and he looks at the PCIMAT screen, and he looks at the chart, and he looks at the PCIMAT screen, and he goes, "Right there. That's where I would be hiding." Okay. They vector a P3 down. They say, "We're going to send a P3 down and drop a torpedo right there." He said drop a torpedo, right? We're going to drop a torpedo. The P3 is heading to that location when it spots a submarine periscope. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
Yep, that's true.
Now, I'll note for the record, when I say drop a torpedo, they're pretending to drop a torpedo. They're not actually dropping a real torpedo.
Right.
But one of the things about the P3 community, you will discover in exercises working with P3 is that there is a difference between fake real attacks and real fake attacks. One time I was doing an exercise, and this one particular P3 crew was not originally scheduled to fly. So one of their officers came aboard the carrier to be a liaison for the exercise. So he was just on board, but then his crew ended up flying anyway. So he actually knew it was his crew in the airplane up there. and they're trying to sort a situation out. The P3 is reporting that they've got a submarine contact, but they think it might be the blue submarine, and you really don't want to sink the blue submarine. And they say, all right, call, don't attack, call off, wave off, let us figure this out a little bit, and we'll get back to you. And they just keep prosecuting the contact. They said, Roger that, and then just kept prosecuting it like they were going to go through with it. And they said, at one point, this enlisted guy turns to the lieutenant and says, Lieutenant, what's with your boys? We told them to wave off. And he said, you don't understand. P3s hate all submarines. Now, what was really going on, though, was the difference between a fake real attack and a real fake attack. A real fake attack is the sort of thing that they do all the time, right? When P3s fly and they find a submarine, they pretend to attack it. They go through all the steps except for the final part where they arm a weapon and drop it on it. So that's how they punch their qualification cards. They go through all the steps. A fake real attack is what I would refer to something in an exercise where you're pretending that it's a real world and you're not just, you're still, they look the same from the outside, but they had gone from doing a fake real attack to doing their normal everyday real fake attack. So they just didn't stop the attack. So FYI, for those of you out in the audience who haven't hunted submarines before. So, but I miss going to sea because I've forgotten about all the parts that I didn't like about going to sea. So, but it was a good time.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Chandler.
Sure.
That was a great story. I always like hearing that story. So, and yeah, and one of the points that Chandler was trying to make. Sorry, my screen is very jumpy, so I just appear to be pausing at various moments in time. But so one of the things with Starfleet battles that they were referring to with plasma torpedoes is in Starfleet battles, you fire plasma torpedoes, and those torpedoes sort of track the other ship. But they're fairly slow, so you can turn and you can outrun them, and you can kind of run them out a little bit. And so that's kind of the reference Chandler's making when he talks about either firing torpedoes or ASROCs off the side of the ship, because it can, the submarine's going to try to run away from that torpedo, or the ship itself could run away from a torpedo, right? I believe you were doing that a few times.
Sure.
Yeah. So anyways, that's the reference he was making there, which is, but a lot of that thought process came from Starfleet battles and thinking it through, and just thinking about, if I do this, what's that going to tell my opponent? And then how's he going to react? And Chandler's really good at thinking through that process. So that's about it for today. So anybody else have any last closing thoughts or anything? Chandler, Chris?
I don't. Let me take a quick look here to see if there is anything in chat. Yeah, Scott Voigt said above Point Loma. Point Loma is just about my favorite place on Earth. Not that I could ever afford to live there.
No kidding.
Right.
So, but I used to go to San Diego once or twice a year when I was working at CNA, and I haven't been back since 2004. I really missed it. One of those trips to San Diego, I'll go ahead and tell the quick story. So I went to there's two of the various JTF hexes I did that finished the week before Thanksgiving, or like the week of Thanksgiving. Like we pulled into port the Tuesday of Thanksgiving week. And both of those times I took advantage of the opportunity to drive up to Los Angeles and go to LozCon. And so the second time I went up to LozCon, it turns out that was the same LozCon that our friends Andy and Joelle Presby, it's the con that they met at. They were both students at the Naval Postgraduate School, but they didn't meet in Monterey. They met in Burbank at this science fiction convention. They were introduced by mutual friends. And so I tell people that I'm claiming at least partial credit because I had the good sense to not meet either of them that weekend and get in the way of them meeting each other. So, because I'm confident that if Andy and I had had a conversation and started talking, etc., he and I would have ended up over at a corner, and he wouldn't have been introduced to Joelle. So I'm glad I had the good sense to not meet Andy for another 5 years. Something like 5 years, I think it was like that. So
you got to have Andy on to talk engineering one of these days. He's fun to talk about Star Trek engineering.
Yeah, I keep suggesting to him that he needs to come on. The problem is that he has 2 kids under 4 years old, and so this is way past his bedtime if things are going well. So it was Lydia's birthday today. I did talk with him today, and he was doing birthday stuff with his youngest, who turned 2 today.
Oh wow!
So he's
yeah.
But we do need to get him on and stuff. So
24/7 suicide watch at that age.
Yes.
Fully mobile, and they like to eat everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see if I can put my finger in this socket.
Yep.
Yeah. So, well, I don't think I've got anything else.
No, I think that's good. Well,
That's
thank you,
fun, guys.
everybody. Good. Yeah. Thank you, Chandler, for being
Thanks for
here.
inviting me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure having you today.
Yes,
And thanks, everybody, for showing up tonight. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Keep the keep the show going and everything. And we will, as always, see you next Saturday. Take care.